Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ed Collab Gathering session number 15. It's called ESPN, PBS NewsHour, and Cable News, Frameworks for Summary, Analysis, and Essays. Presenting on this today is the brilliant and lovely Maggie B. Roberts, who many of you know from her work as a National Educational Consultant, Educator Collaborative Fellow, and co-author of the book DIY Literacy, Teaching Tools for Differentiation, Rigor, and Independence. As the parent to two young boys, she is also very likely working on just a few hours sleep. So let's be sure to give her a virtual warm welcome to Maggie as she presents her work to us today. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you so much. I was looking at the avatar picture I have for myself. I was like, we need to change that picture. Like that is like in no way representative of how I look on a day-to-day basis. Those of you who saw that picture on the screen, let's just say a couple things. Before children, nowhere near 40. In New York City, where you had access to like the best photographers in the world. Anyway, so I was like looking at that picture as Shauna was doing the introduction, and I was like, oh gosh, did I put concealer on before I started this presentation? I'm so happy to be here. I love this gathering and the way that we come together in real time like this, but also that we live off of the sessions as the week moves on. I can't tell you, or the year moves on rather, I can't tell you how many teachers I'll get emails from that said, they were watching the archived version of a session they couldn't catch in real time. And I just love how this conference lives throughout the year. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to join you in your learning today. So I thought maybe I would start by saying, for some of you, this is like your fourth workshop in a row. You might be like a little like, okay, how do I orient myself to this next session? So I thought just by going, at the end of the day here, this is going to be content that you could put into any unit where kids write nonfiction or read nonfiction. Right. So I might be an English or an ELA teacher. This work would fit really nicely into any informational writing or analytical writing or nonfiction reading. A lot of this work today is newer work that I've been doing this year alongside amazing teachers. So it's fun to talk about it in a more formal way like this. And a lot of the teachers that I'm working on with this work is our science and social studies teachers. So that would also be an audience for this work. Basically, the reason for this workshop is that there's this shared trouble that I think lots of teachers have, no matter what content they teach, honestly, no matter what grade level they teach, if they teach above third grade. And this workshop, or its origin story, is through the trouble of asking kids to summarize, and it's kind of a disaster. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I'm a guest teacher now, I left my classroom years ago, and I get the opportunity to guest teach in classrooms all over the country. And teachers and I will set up my visits ahead of time so we can co-create these classroom demos. And I'm not going to lie to you, when they say, I'd love to see a lesson on summary writing, like, I have to like force the smile and bring it up and be like, yes, let's do this. Because, to be honest, I felt and still kind of feel really inadequate when trying to help kids summarize. I just think it's this really dark horse of a skill, because what kids will do when I ask them to summarize, or when they need to summarize, they'll just retell everything. Which I totally get, but it's different, right? Summarizing is different than retelling. Or in terms of like the trouble with the analysis piece, like you'll be like, okay, we're studying this inventor in science, and you need to analyze the impact of this invention on the field. And, the analysis kind of looks like, this is important because this is important. You know what I mean? It'll be kind of like this redundant, like they're almost there. Or it will be like, this shows that inventions are cool. Like they'll just kind of restate that topic sentence. And, I don't poo-poo that at all. It's really good. It's a great place to start with analysis. But the teachers and I that have been working on this year was just craving more of like more ways to help kids write summaries well, with independence, with transfer, being able to do it across lots of different assignments or genres, and kind of authentic, right? That they could kind of find their voice as an analyst, or they could find their voice as summarizing a topic. Hence the title of this workshop, ESPN, PBS NewsHour, and cable news. A bunch of us started studying how analysts on sports television networks or podcasts or historical documentaries or historical podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. Or just kind of like, hashtag real fact. I love my Friday nights where I get to watch my hour PBS NewsHour. Like it's the best. And the time when everybody comes on, the powerful triad comes on and they debate. It's like I get goosebumps. I love that part. And so we kind of give ourselves the homework assignment to start studying the analysts on these shows and networks, because I was like, what they're not doing is retelling everything when they're providing a summary of the news of the day, let's say. And they're not just analyzing at the level of like, this is important because I said so. Like they make a lot of money to fill a lot of airtime with their analysis and summary. And so those became our mentor texts for this workshop in order for kids to discover other frameworks to use when summarizing and analyzing. And I'm going to be sharing that with you as our little workshop time floats on, where you'll get some frameworks for summary. You'll see some student work or teacher work paired with it, and then you'll have some time to try it. I don't want to leave out introducing the third part of this workshop title, which is frameworks for essays. And this is also newer work because I am like riveted, in love with this new book. You can see I ripped it. I was so enthusiastic with my book cover, whipping it out, showing a group of teachers. I was like, read this book, Why They Can't Write, Killing the 5-Paragraph Essay and Other Necessities by the brilliant John Warner. I am such a fan of him and this body of work. But I was getting really curious about, what has gone so drastically wrong with the 5-paragraph essay that has led kids to get to the collegiate level, because that's his vantage point. He positions himself in this conversation as a college professor and a professional writer, where they really struggle with writing. And sometimes that's hard to hear, because I'm like, every generation kind of is like, kids today can't write. I feel like that is something typical. But the way that John Warner writes about that is he takes all the reasons why and all the theories why and just like unpacks them, disrupts them bit by bit. And so some teachers and I were reading this book, and we were like, okay, I can get to the radical place of like killing the 5-paragraph essay. Like we'll go there, but we need a little babysit, because we were clinging to our graphic organizers a little bit. And so we just started to explore what are all the ways that kids can outgrow their thinking within a 5-paragraph structure that could then lead them to breaking it. Because what we found from 3rd grade to 6th grade to 8th grade to 10th grade is that when kids were writing these 5-paragraph essays, it basically was the same structure, like internal structure. So it was thesis, reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, right? So like we were calling it, they were like idea prove it essays. And that did feel redundant. I'm like, there's got to be other ways that kids could outgrow their thinking inside of that structure before they totally dismantle it and do a different kind of essay structure, like a journey of thought structure. So that's the workshop. I'm excited to share this with you. I'm going to disappear onto my slides for a moment, because I just want to layer it in. That was the rationale for this workshop, but I also want to layer it in with some research. Just kind of go on a little, right? We did that, right? We did that. Everything. They retell everything. They restate everything. all of this is kind of writing, right? It's writing about reading, writing about ideas, writing about research, writing original ideas. And my true north is a writing workshop teacher, and I consider myself a writer as well. And I am always constantly humbled by how difficult writing is. Mel Levine's work, this is one of my favorite quotes, that writing is the largest orchestra a kid's mind has to conduct, right? When we ask them to not only talk in summary or analysis, but write in summary analysis or write an essay, that they are combining so many different things at one time. For instance, they are combining just even the physicality of writing. My friend, colleague, and all things in life mentor, Colleen Cruz, will always guide our attention to how is the kid holding the pen? How are they sitting? That there's a real physical act of writing, and that has to work in concert with your ability to make decisions in the moment around executive functioning. And then that layers in with automaticity of language and just pulling up your thoughts and letting them flow through the keyboard of the page. And so I think both are two truths, right? That kids will really struggle summarizing or analyzing or even diversifying their essay structure. And we need to give opportunities for them to find other ways to find their voice inside of those three types of writing, because they are critical kinds of writing. We can see it all over our media and our screens all the time. But also this idea that I'm going to be totally transparent with you. Let me put my face back on. So this is when in the audience, I would say, so I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying? And usually we giggle, and then someone says what I'm saying. So I can't totally remember where I was going with that. I'll look at the archive and figure that out. But this idea that because so much is working at one point, if I struggle a little bit trying to understand what I'm reading, or if I struggle a little bit with not feeling that automaticity and that fluency of analytical writing, that's going to be really hard. And so I guess those two truths are kids really struggle with this, and it's also just really difficult. And I think this other one would be worth sharing with colleagues who are interested in working on this with us is, as a reader and a thinker and a beer, summary and analysis is so difficult because when you pull the threads of all the things kids are doing as a reader to write a summary or write in a piece of analysis, there's a lot going on at one time, right? First, a kid has to read a whole text or understand a body of work and determine what's important and what is worth summarizing and putting forth first or analyzing. That decision making, when I have a really wide body of knowledge that I'm trying to summarize or analyze, can absolutely be something worth investigating. The second, just the synthesis work, right, that you do as a reader, that you are, taking all of this information and synthesizing it into a bigger idea, so that you're not retelling the article bit by bit, but you are finding trends and surmising those trends in a summary, which is ultimate synthesis. And just that scale of analysis, writing workshop is my true north, reading workshop is my true north. And I do a lot of skill-based instruction that's layered into kids' reading experiences throughout their day. And one of the highest, hardest comprehension skills is just analysis, right? Being able to look at something, know enough about it to be able to, take it apart and address it bit by bit. So teachers and I have given ourselves fun homework on this, right? The way that the rest of this half hour is going to go is we're going to spend a little bit of time with summary and then a little bit of time with analysis, and then we'll close the workshop with a little bit of time for essay structure. And again, if you're just joining us, you're going to get like some frameworks paired with some student work or teacher work, and then some time to just explore one of my favorite new resources where you could gather texts for this work. So the homework assignment I would give you too is watch a lot of TV. Or listen to a lot of news or podcasts. And, you know, sometimes I feel like I listen to a lot of political radio. I listen to a lot of sports radio. And, you know, one thing I'm doing as I listen to that is just the writer in me is noticing, you know, we have to remember the essential work that Katie Wood-Ray put into the field in terms of studying mentor texts. And, you know, first reading a text as a reader and then reading a text as a writer, right? And then we take that and we draw a parallel and an extension to the work of Kristen Zemke and Katie Multeris when they talk about mentor tech, that as we are watching and listening literacy in different digital forms, visual forms, auditory forms, visual forms, that I can not just experience that as a reader and listen to my sports or my political radio and get revved up, but I also can read it as a writer and kind of look to see how those writers are writing, whether it is a more traditional composition or they are just speaking extemporaneously. So homework assignment number 1 is just pick a program that has a lot of analysis and a lot of summary. Like they have to summarize a bunch of things and start just listening to the moves that those analysts make. That's step 1. It's just like, what's the language that they use? Sometimes you'll hear like, like I'll hear, you know, things like, you know, circling back to your point, or I'm losing all of them because I did not write them down because I was so confident I would remember them. But I'll hear it today when I listen to the news as I clean up from the day. To your point, that's a good one, right? To your point, and then they'll like kind of summarize their point and extend it with analysis. So one is just, you know, looking at this work with the lens of the language and the phrasing and the syntax that analysts will use in the news. But then it's also really interesting to try to not only track the language of these analysts and these amazing summarizers, but try to like figure out a framework of what they're doing. Right. And so this chart, as you can see, it's a chart that was built this year with teachers who are kind of think tanking this topic with me, that we came up with. We as adults came up with those 4 frameworks that we noticed that political and sports analysts were making as they were analyzing the sports of the news of the day. And the chart written in green and orange was like pre-made. That was the work that the teachers and I had discovered. So it seemed like the easiest way to analyze, to deepen your understanding about a topic, and what analysts do all the time on TV and the radio and whatever, is that they have a reaction. They make a judgment. They fill airtime with lots of personal reactions or historical reactions or judgments about a political decision. Then slightly more complicated, many analysts would talk out the pros and the cons, right? Like this was during the time of the government shutdown. And we were watching, and analysts would talk out the good stuff of that or the not so good stuff, or the strength of this political decision, or the struggle that these political leaders are having from that decision. So being able to kind of talk around both sides of that. Then we noticed a lot of analysts, what we felt was a little harder, were they were using a framework of impact. Like they would talk a lot about the impact of the news of the day or the implications of things that had happened. Those of you who know me know that I watched Anthony Davis's career quite closely as seeing him as a little kid grow up to be this amazing basketball player. And, when all of that drama was going on with the Lakers and the trade, and is he going to go Celtics and all of that, many sports analysts were talking about the impact of the moves that these different players in the league would have on, I don't know, the rest of the league or his career or a coach's standing. So lots of like predictions, but a little bit more sophisticated than predictions, more of like an impact. And then lots of analysis, especially if you knew your stuff, were able to make a ton of connections. During the government shutdown, people were making lots of connections to other shutdowns or other administrations that had tried the same strategies, or connecting it to other countries. And so we went in and we taught this lesson, to this group of kids that had been researching their own nonfiction research, and we had them kind of rehearse these different ways to analyze. And what you're going to see next is just in a class of 24, 26 kids, all the kids had to analyze during workshop that day. And this was handed in at the end of the day. It was kind of a 15, 20-minute quick write. But they could choose what framework they felt most confident in. And they had rehearsed those frameworks aloud with a partner. Kind of the mantra of a workshop teacher is, watch me, let's try together with a partner. Now, off you go to try the work on your own. So one kid at one table had a reaction, right? As population grows, people need more resources, but a lot of countries and people take and use more resources than they need. As I completed my research, I saw the global inequity is a large problem than I thought it would be. And population connects this topic because as the population gets bigger, the more resources we need. The kid that she was sitting next to tried out pro and con, right? Deforestation is a really bad thing happening around the world. It could cause global warming and extinction and more deserts. But of course, deforestation can make room for more houses, buildings, roads, and other things that humans need. Then we had another kind of group of kids that went with impact, right? The resources in our world are really slowly disappearing as our population grows. The resources we do have are not spread equally around the world, and about 3 billion people are affected by this. This inadequacy of resources stops people from achieving their goals and providing for their families, right? So talking about impact. And then you got some kids who just went nuts and did a connection. And I love this because we collected these as kind of exit slips on the way out so we could study them. And this kid is like, I didn't finish, right? I love it. But this child knew so much that started making all of these connections with this work. And what was neat is as we pursued this further, other kids were coming up with their own frameworks or discovering their own frameworks. So this was a chart we had to make after we were working with kids for a while, that some kids would do problem and solution, where they would break down or clarify the problem and talk out what needs to be done. Another move that some kids discovered was their analysis took the form of a call of action, right, to raise awareness or local and global change. And then you have, some language frames that can also be really helpful stepping stools into analysis. This work is these sentence starters are documented widely with the curriculum from the Reading and Writing Project, but anything from this is important because to this shows that. So, hello. So by doing this work for the past couple of months and sharing with you in real time, it's neat because I can then say, all right, you need to go analyze, provide your analysis from this topic that you're researching. And I always felt like I had ways to get kids in, those stepping stools, this is important because, or some people argue. And I think those really are wonderful. This is just an extension of that, of kind of taking a step back, and I could go and coach a kid and say, well, what are the pros and cons, right? No matter what they're researching or what they're reading, or it'd be fun for some of us to start even thinking, do these what would be the ones for literature, because this was done in a heavy nonfiction part of the year. But we noticed it gave us fuel as teachers to just quickly drop a framework in front of a kid and let them use that structure to hold their analysis, right? Like if the talk prompts or writing parts are these kind of micro holds for kids through analysis, this felt like a macro hold for kids through their analysis. And so I'm gonna do a check on time. Just for fun here, I'm going to share my screen again, because sometimes it's nice to walk away with workshops like these with like a place to get just like a new one gimme, one tip of like a place to go for different type of text. This is currently my favorite one. And if you're on your phone or open up a browser, you could head there along with me, thinkalong.org. And my friend Melanie Meehan put me on to this site. And once you go there, it will look like this. Shauna, I think you'll be able to like see my webpage as I go. But it's from Connecticut Public Radio, go Connecticut. And it's using trusted source materials from PBS and NPR and other local media stations, right? Which is really important to support our local media stations along with our national stations. It's a free program that helps kids think critically about media, develop informed opinions, and practice respectful civil discourse, which if I could make eye contact with you right now, if you're around my Thanksgiving dinner table, we need this. Yeah, we need this. I love it. And I can view all topics. I can be like, yes, please. And I have all these current events, science-y, social studies topics. Should high schools prioritize college or workforce preparations? Should school weeks be 4 days instead of 5? Should scientists be able to modify genes? Should controversial books be censored, right? All of these kind of provocative questions that have lots of different ways to have different points of view around those topics. So I've been working with this one a lot because, yes to a 4-day week. I don't need to read anything. Yes, right. But I can, this site prompts me to really like read multiple articles on this topic, right? So what school, I could watch a video, which also is a nice equalizer in terms of lots of kids can access this text. And then before I make an opinion, I need to like listen to 2 different sides of what people might be saying about this topic. And then, like, those are podcasts, right? And then I could do some reading of like, okay, I could read a piece about the superintendent in Colorado. And then also, these are just lovely, but I have these, who created this message, these contemplation cards. What creative techniques are used to attract my attention? Why is this message being sent, right? So those are all just like really great things to think about. But also, when you think about those questions, kind of those contemplation questions, it's also really good. Like if I put my like Common Core hat on, those are like, I see Common Core standard 2, 4, 5, 6. I hate myself a little bit for like having all those memorized just so quickly. But it's fine. It's fine, right? It's good work, right? But like thinking about like why authors create these texts and what techniques did they use. My Microsoft update just flashed on, and I don't think I've ever updated my Microsoft. Like I feel like it's like my software is like 79 years old, because whenever it pops up and it's like, would you like to update? And I'm like, no, I would not. I'd like to continue using like the paperclip guy that pops up with eyes. And he's like, hi. So any of you out there who just ignore the update, I am with you. So, and then also too, it's if I work kind of like I'm supporting a lot of schools right now with their high stakes testing, and they're doing, you know, an amazing job to like keep teaching real. And that's also a really good test prep step, those contemplation questions, because those tend to be very tested standards. So all in all, I love that new site. And I thought you could just, I'm going to do like a couple of minutes of wait time, where you could ask questions on our Twitter hashtag, or you could research the Think Along website. And maybe, you know, if we had longer time together, just think about if you were to read one of those or two of those and write a quick analysis of it, could you play with a framework, right? I'll put the slide back up so you can see that. Like, what would it mean to read an article and provide an analysis that was a reaction, or an analysis that was like pro-con, or an analysis that was talking about the impact of this, or an analysis that was making connections. So let's just take a couple of minutes. I'll put the screen back up and you can do a little exploring, and then we'll begin to close with summary and different essay structures. About another 45 seconds or so. So I've been kind of just playing around with all these different kinds of ways to use this work this year in fourth grade classrooms, eighth grade classrooms, ninth grade classrooms. You know, one part could just be like, I give this, I do like a closed sort, like a closed study where I give those frameworks to kids and I have them read a piece of analysis or listen to analysis and have them identify when they hear a reaction or an impact, right? So just building that awareness that analysis isn't this amorphous thing, that there are these like frameworks you can go into. And then I think the second tip that I've learned working with this in classrooms this year is like, again, going back, writing is the largest orchestra a child's mind can conduct. And so talking, like removing the physical act of writing and just talking as a class, giving analysis with reaction, talking about the impact of something. So like the kids that I showed you those examples of, they had talked out a few of those frameworks as a partner, and then they went and took pen to paper and did some writing. And then I guess the third tip, if you would like to outgrow it or this is resonating with you, it's not just like an analysis will hold 8 minutes of airtime only doing one of those frameworks. Do you know what I mean? Like some analysts are known for certain frameworks. You're like, he's going to give it a reaction, right? And sometimes people flock to different kinds of analysis because of the ways that they analyze the news of the day. But many times, you know, a savvy analyst will go through these different kind of frameworks depending on, I don't know, a lot, depending on how they want the audience to react, depending on how much knowledge they have around that specific issue, perhaps how much time they have to fill. So that could be a third way to live off of this. I want to do part 2 of this workshop and talk a little bit about summary. So going back, some teachers and I was like, they wanted me to demo summary, and I was like, I don't really want to. And they were like, we don't either. I'm like, why is summary so hard? It's also so tested all the time. It's like this really high stakes skill. It's really hard for both people to write and people to teach. And so what we did is, some teachers and I, we like went through our filing cabinets and all the piles of papers everywhere in our classrooms. And I said, just pull anything you have in your, like, that's like support for your kids when they write summary. So teachers were like rifling through their file folders and their stacks of papers on their desk. And we all just brought anything we had. And so this was one of them that was really emblematic of lots of supports that we already had written up for summary. So this one, step 1, read the text. Step 2, identify and copy the main idea onto the graphic organizer. 3, identify and copy 3 supporting details, right? 4, write a summary. And then your summary, paraphrase the main idea. Paraphrase supporting detail number 1 using a sentence starter. Paraphrase supporting detail, right? And so like, we'll give those to kids, and then it's like, it doesn't work very well. We were like, it doesn't work very well. So this team and I had a lot of coffee. We had a whole morning session together. We had like a 3-hour learning session together. We were caffeinated. We were ready to go. And we were like, let's just do this. They had been taking on some of the framework analysis pieces with me. And so we were like, let's just do it for summary. So this summary work actually came out of some social studies classroom, middle school classrooms, and we just took it and ran with it. And we said, okay, what if we all read the same article and we all write summaries with different structures? This felt harder, but it was really cool. And I don't have a lot of student work to go with it now. I have a lot of teacher writing samples, but let me just show you what we've started. And invite you to join in on this work if it feels interesting to you. Okay. So we all read this article, which is one of my favorites. I feel like it was given to me by Cass Miner when we were working together in a building in Brooklyn. Thank you, Cass. I still work on this. It's all about eating bugs, so you're welcome. And we all read it. And we said, all right, these social studies teachers had come up with different frameworks for summary. And we were like, all right, we're going to try it. So one was time. I could summarize a topic or an article with the framework of time. So these social studies teachers were talking about kind of inventions of different civilizations. They were talking about gunpowder. And they wrote a summary in terms of like, well, in this era, gunpowder was used for this. And then in this era, it was used for this in this era. And then that led us to think about change was a second framework, right? At first, gunpowder was used for blah, 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 but then there was a need for blah, blah, blah. So then it was used for blah, blah, blah. Okay. Reasons why. So if I go to the bug example, reasons why we need to eat bugs. Like there's a lot of people and diminishing space, and it's really expensive to raise livestock. There's all these reasons why. I could summarize that way. Ways. Right? That I could think of what are the 3 ways that bugs are prepared to help us eat them as food, right? They are roasted, they are disguised in treats, or different ways you could educate a population about the need for eating bugs. Parts is kind of visual, kind of like you're thinking in metaphor. Like I could think about the parts of a topic. So some of the kids in the social studies class were talking about kites, and they wrote a summary about the parts of the kite. Or I could write a summary with the parts of the different, what do we do for bugs? I think it was I think that teacher did like parts of the problem, right? Like what are the different parts, right? There was like space and too many people and not enough resources. Kinds was a 6th one that we tried. So different types, this kind of bug, this kind of bug, this kind of preparation, this kind of preparation. And so when kids were writing summaries, what we felt like we needed to do first was all do the work ourselves. I feel like if writing workshop is kind of my true north, I try to do the writing lessons that I'm going to be teaching my kids. So we were caffeinated. We were like, let's read it. And so then we all wrote these micro summaries using different frameworks. It's too text dense for this type of platform, but my website is kateandmaggie.com. Some of those summaries are up on the website. And so it was cool. It was really cool. And some of the frameworks didn't work as well. Like one of the teachers was like, mine doesn't work. And I was like, that's probably real, right? Like it doesn't mean that every summary framework is going to work. But what was neat is that everybody was true to this article, but everybody just wrote about it in a different way. And it gave a container to organize their summary. And so then again, we can go to a kid and we're like, summarize. It's like, what's the main idea? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know either. We get it. We could also say, well, let's read this together and talk about it of like reasons why, or ways bugs are used, or how it's changed over time. Just another access point for kids to think structurally about these kinds of writing, because it is very, I struggle with that because I struggle with structure as a writer. And so having some like these like macro footholds to be like, okay, really all I need to do to summarize this article is think about the different kinds of bugs people are eating. And then it also, the kickback of that work also is that every kid didn't write the same summary. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to repeat that. Every kid did not write the same summary, which was really nice. Everybody like summarized the text. All the teachers summarized the text the same way, but it was really nice because there was a little bit of like difference and flair, which I think is important. Okay, so then third, essay frameworks. Reading this book, ripping the cover, loving it. And, one of my mentors and first real teachers of writing was Lucy Calkins. I went and studied with her as a grad student. And I'm reminded of her work around helping kids structure essays in different ways. And I brought that mental file folder up and I'm reading this book and I'm like, all right, let's make sure like kids have a couple of different ways they could think about an essay in a 5-paragraph framework. Let's end with that. Right. So this group of teachers and I, we were playing around with the claim of we need tougher gun control laws in this country. And there's lots of ways that I could structure an essay around that. That's 5-paragraph, right? That still has like some control and some support, but that kids can find different ways to be inside of that, right? So reasons why we need tougher gun control laws. The USA has a really high gun violence. Public spaces are becoming unsafe. Lobby groups control politics. Ways that we could get tougher gun control, right? We could limit the type of guns, increase background checks, require more trading. I could talk about the kinds of laws that we need, like state laws, national laws, even global laws. I could do the whole like part of the gun control debate. I would revise that now, but it could be all kinds of like DC, gun lobbyists, the NRA, Sandy Hook promise. Like I could think about parts. I could do times when and have a real narrative driven essay. Newtown, Connecticut, Columbine, Colorado, Parkland, Florida. I could propose solutions, right? School law, solutions for school laws. I could use that as a structure, town laws, state laws. So that as I, think about the different kinds of ways that I could structure an essay, I could, as a workshop person, we're kind of like, boot camp people. We're like, okay, try your essay this way and then try it this way and then talk with a friend. What's more powerful, or like I could make an essay plan depending on my audience. I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to a school board. Maybe I need a times when over kinds of. Maybe if I go talk to my local politician, I want to think about solutions of or kinds. And so again, giving kids that structure of like, how do I become really independent in that 5-paragraph essay structure, but also find ways to be different inside of that so that I can connect structure, with choice, with my audience. So in any unit with summary writing or analysis writing, some takeaways is building in explicit teaching to think about summary and analysis as a structure or a framework. In my work of this year is build in lots of practice for students to write and think and talk out summaries and analytical pieces. And if you can recruit lots of different kinds of teachers in on this work, building connections with content area, social studies, science, then kids will get that repetitive practice that they need to, again, have some automaticity with this type of thinking and work. Thank you for joining me alongside this topic and this new work. Let's stay connected. If you want to get in on this, we have a bunch of teachers. I've got a bunch of teachers that you can join the club of us working on this. You can find me at kateandmaggie.com. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. That was wonderful. You have lots of love on Twitter, so you're going to need to check that out. And love too how candid you are. You are just so real, and it shows, and you're such a pro. And there were so many great nuggets of information here. So definitely excited for people who didn't have a chance to watch a live session to check out the archive. Now, right at this moment, hopefully you can see that we have our closing session coming up at 3 o'clock, I believe. It is social action and social media, changing the world through student voice. And also, please, if anything today inspired you or made you feel as though you got something really great out of it, please consider donating to our adopted charity for today, the Grace Smith House, which provides support and services for domestic abuse victims by offering residential shelter, non-residential services, counseling, legal assistance, and more. We are so grateful for the work that they do. All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining us, and have a great afternoon. Thanks, Maggie.